I like to say, and welcome to everyone. Okay.
Your attention, please. Hello. Again, welcome. This is St. Mark's Mann Hall, M-A-H-O-N, named after a deacon, Janine Mann, who served here. It was before I was at St. Mark's. And her picture there is on the east wall. So we remember her, give thanks for her ministry and this beautiful space where we can gather as a post-service time fellowship. There are going to be several people making some comments, and I just want you to know this is there are people on Zoom, so welcome Zoom friends, and also going to YouTube where it's being recorded. So if you wanted to come back and see this another time, it'll be there on the St. Mark's YouTube channel. We'll say Schenck Reception. Schenck funeral is the item. Martha, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. So after I speak, anyone who would like to come up, most welcome. There's one story that Bob loved to tell over and it goes something like this. After my single bypass in 1981, I went to the Pritikin Longevity Center in Santa Monica, where I learned how to prepare heart-healthy meals and to set up an exercise routine. Until I got my treadmill, I would race walk along the lakefront, starting at Oak Street Beach. In September of that year, I was just starting to exercise when I saw a beautiful woman reading a book. As an aside, this description caused me endless embarrassment. Undaunted, he would continue. I walked out to North Beach and then turned around and was wondering, is she still there? And I told myself, what do I have to lose? So I came up to her and asked, may I say hello? This then was the beginning of our relationship, married June 13, 1982, ending only 43 years later, drawing his last breath on November 30th, 2025. So what kind of man was Bob Schenck? The only son of Isaac Schenck and Pearl Bonan, with 5 half-sisters and brothers, he grew up on a modest farm near Elmwood, Illinois, Peoria County. An idyllic rural boyhood came to an abrupt end when his beloved mother died when he was only 12 years old from colon cancer that was misdiagnosed. In later years, he surmised that he chose the medical field because if it were in his powers, he would have saved his mother. His father took up with his drinking companion, Fanny. Those were rough years for Bob. A spirit less resilient would have been crushed. And yet he entered the Christian school, Taylor University in Upland, Indiana. Thanks to his half-sister, Verna's encouragement, and his half-brother, Lee's financial assistance. He was only 15 years old when he went to college. Juggling several part-time jobs, he got through the University of Illinois Medical School, and it was there he met Ruth, a nurse who shared his deep faith and his missionary zeal. Through the Public Health Service, he worked at an Indian reservation in Bemidji, Minnesota, where due to his intervention, a hospital on the reservation was not closed. Bob and Ruth adopted an American Indian baby who was sadly and permanently affected by her biological mother's drinking. Claudia, when she was a teenager, rebelled and chose to live on the reservation, becoming an alcoholic herself, giving birth to a number of children and dying in her 40s. Ruth and Bob had their firstborn, Lynn, now calling herself Rebecca, a brilliant graduate of Bryn Mawr with a short-term career as a naval officer. She lives somewhere in Illinois and is estranged from the family. Bob was transferred to the National Leprosarium in Carville, Louisiana, where he was exposed to hand surgery, making the acquaintance of his first significant mentor, Dr. Daniel Reardon. Months later, he had the opportunity to pursue his dream of posting in Ethiopia, facilitated by a Baptist organization. One of his roommates at Taylor University was from Ethiopia, and it was as a college student that he first nurtured the idea of becoming a medical missionary. Bob immediately started exploring the possibility of establishing a leprosarium in Ethiopia, which would have been the first in Africa, but tragedy intervened. Ruth gave birth to Gwen with the birth defect of spina bifida. With such babies, after the defect is corrected, they can live normal lives. But Gwen never had the mental intelligence of beyond 4 years old. Even more demanding, she routinely, every day, had to have her stomach pumped so she could urinate. With Ruth flying separately with the 2 toddlers, Bob immediately flew back to the United States, to Philadelphia, where the medical center there corrected Gwen's birth defect. Without a job and no longer under the Baptist auspices, he took a position as a doctor at a medical clinic for minors in California, Pennsylvania. The family was fairly content, but Bob soon chafed at the routine and the lack of mental challenge. Plus, he had a new dream, to become a hand surgeon. Uprooting the family, Bob first received general surgery training in Akron, Ohio, followed by a plastic surgery residence at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. And then the plum opportunity, a 6-month residency with the world-renowned hand surgeon, Dr. William Littler. At the age of 40, he was far older than his fellow residents and colleagues. And yet he landed the opportunity to establish a private hand practice at Rush Medical Center in Chicago. With no financial backing, he had to learn how to quickly build a practice to support his family with the additions of Karen, Heidi, and Rob. The stress took its toll. He underwent a bypass in 1981 and was determined to make the style changes. That's when he went to the Pritikin Longevity Center and found himself race walking one glorious September day in 1981. Needless to say, my parents in Spokane, Washington, were not thrilled with my approaching marriage to a man 20 years older and with a medical practice on shaky grounds, by then twice divorced, with 5 children. Gwen had died, and furthermore, he was a Protestant. And yet we found a way to make it work, and work he did. He contracted for a large office space on the 2nd floor of Rush's professional building with his logo and open hand incised on the glass door, still there today. The office now houses 2 departments, internal medicine and dermatology. He hired occupational therapists and established clinics throughout Chicagoland. He funded his own research into microsurgery, developing a prototype of a sutureless method of closing wounds. He invented a dynamic traction for fingers with multiple fractures to mend without surgery. He trained 39 fellows, hoping to establish a new hand practice. But that dream eluded him, partially because of his own driven personality, but also times were changing. He got no support from his own plastic surgery department, and the large, fiercely competitive orthopedic group hired their own hand surgeons. PBOs and HMOs were now in the catbird seat, determining how much they would compensate doctors. With a large overhead and staff, he had to make the difficult decision to give up his beloved, well-appointed office and examining rooms for a cubbyhole also in the professional building. But even then, he couldn't economically make it, finally closing his doors for good at the age of 77 in 2008. Other dreams eluded him. He wanted to be president of one of the two prestigious national hand societies, but it was impossible. The organizations were so political that large practices from nationally known medical centers would champion their own candidates. These slights I felt most keenly. I recall attending the banquets of medical societies, seeing the wives bustle around to put their purses next to each other on the tables in clannish conspiracy. There was more than one occasion when we looked at the gathering of doctors huddled together, calculating who was the most prestigious, and we said to ourselves, let's just leave and have our own romantic dinner somewhere else. And yet, when he had the opportunity to shine, he did so most gloriously. He was co-founder of the Chicago Society for Surgery of the Hand, founding president of the Hand Surgery Endowment of the American Association for Surgery of the Hand, sending American hand therapists to their counterparts in developing countries, and president of the Holland Society of New York, ushering in women members for the first time wearing his medal, and co-founder of the annual Lenten Men's Retreat for the Chicago Episcopal Diocese. When he closed his doors in 2008, it could have been the end of a lifetime's work, and yet it wasn't. We sent out feelers to hospitals in Africa and got invitations for Bob to teach hand surgery to qualified hand surgeons in Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Uganda. I had gotten my credentials to teach English as a second language, and it was the start of a new career for me. He wasn't through yet. Nearly 80 years old, he bought a used ambulance on eBay in England and drove it with his friend, Norbert Urtel, from London to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, where he also had volunteered as a surgeon, raising money for a charity. Upon his return, he authored a book about his adventures and his biography, both available here. Please take one. Life seemed to settle down, but unknowns to me, he confided to a friend that he was experiencing full brain fog. He qualified for a test drug in 2015, sponsored by the Lilly Pharmaceutical, to treat Alzheimer's disease. When he developed frontal brain bleeds, he was removed from the drug, and 10 years later, we learned that he actually had been on the placebo. Using a cane that could be used as a stool, he came with me on a long journey to Edmonton, Canada, where I attended an artist seminar. While he coped well, increasingly I observed bizarre behavior. Still, we were managing at home until I fell in a crosswalk and broke my shoulder in 2023. With my arm in the sleeve, I would do the grocery shopping, hauling back one bag at a time. One day when I got back to the condo, I was confronted by the temporary office manager who barked at me in the lobby, "What is wrong with your husband?" Dumbfounded, I didn't know what he was talking about. Evidently, Bob had left the condo without his keys, got on the elevator, walked outside, and became lost. The doorman retrieved him. The manager informed me, "Our doormen are not here to look after your husband." After that, I hired caregivers, remarkable women and one man who doted on Bob, while I did my errands or hiked with friends. Erratic incidents were becoming more regular, but I dismissed them in my mind. In 2024, I booked a 2-week vacation in Italy, and I found an excellent temporary home for Bob, Churchill Place Memory Care in Glen Ellen, with full expectation that he would come home with me and life would continue with the caregivers. When I walked through the front door at Churchill Place after my vacation, I happened to see 2 caregivers helping Bob out of a wheelchair and onto a couch in preparation for a resident's birthday party. He looked so feeble and helpless, I was shocked. I went up to him and said, "Honey, I'm back from Italy." And the first thing he said to me, after staying at Churchill for only 2 weeks, is this. He pointed to the man next to him and said, "He's my friend." I had to make a decision on the spot. We met with an administrator and I said the most difficult, brave words I ever had to say. "My dear, I can't give you the level of care at home that you can get here. I think you need to stay at Churchill." He agreed without any protest. And so began the last phase of Bob's life, 18 months at Churchill Place. At first, he readily participated in numerous activities and shared companionship with several men at one table during meals. But after he was hospitalized for a urinary tract infection in February 2025, his health deteriorated. And I will not sugarcoat this disease. In the end, he needed to be lifted into bed with a hoist. Aides had to feed him food, soft food, wash him, change his diapers, and clothe him. For a man who commanded an operating theater, what was remarkable was he accepted all this without complaint and sometimes with humor. He was gentle, kind, and utterly sweet, an aspect of his personality that I had not seen until now, a side he couldn't dare reveal given the viciousness and the demands of the medical profession. In the end, he couldn't speak, and he passed away with his granddaughter, Jamie Schmidt, and me by his side at 12:25 p.m., November 30th, just hours after St. Mark's volunteer Hester had brought Holy Communion and prayed for him. Years before, Bob and I would like to discuss how he would want to be remembered. I wrote and rewrote his obituary countless times, subtracting and adding. And we noted that the notable hand surgeon, Dr. Blair from Loyola University, got an extensive obituary in the editorial pages of the Chicago Tribune, not in the classified ads. And we thought too Bob would be so honored. You might say it was egotism to the extreme, but what man or woman who has striven and overcome multiple obstacles doesn't have a strong ego? I thought of it this way. He was deprived of love as a child with his mother's death and a father who himself succumbed to dementia, becoming violent and dying in a mental institution. But there's another factor. Bob believed that God had given him a mission to heal and not to fail, as did the doctors who treated his mother. The next remarks I'm addressing to Bob, because I know you are here. You are listening, and you will be with me every day by my side. I took your obituary and picture to Rush, and I tried to find the medical office, which evidently no longer exists. Instead, I was told to go east about 5 blocks to Rush's administration building. I finally found the communications office, but the person in charge wasn't even there. She works at home. And I told the receptionist, "You devoted nearly 50 years to this institution, and it has come to this. To this day, I have not gotten a single acknowledgement or condolence from anyone at Rush." I then tried the Chicago Tribune. I couldn't reach the editorial office by phone, so I sent my well-written obituary and picture to the Tribune, and I waited and waited. And it finally dawned on me they weren't going to publish your obituary. So I took out a small classified ad. I just want you to know, Bob, I tried very, very hard. I sent out your accomplishments to all your schools and organizations, but the slights that you experienced during your life has shadowed you even now. Sometimes we learn from those who have gone before us what we can do better, but God has given me a different path. I've always wanted to be a published novelist. I worked decades on the stream, finally finishing a novel that I thought was excellent by all accounts, and not one of the 100 literary agents that I wrote to wanted to see the manuscript. I ultimately self-published through Amazon. Bob and I are cut from the same cloth. We tried with every ounce of the strength we possess, but opportunities often eluded us. I will continue to write novels and paint with this realistic expectation. None of them will be commercially published. None of my art will find a market. And what a great gift. This has given me the liberty to create exactly as I see fit. And I told Bob that if possible, I will continue his interest in Africa, already making the initiative by contacting the American Embassy in Cameroon, as suggested by my former Cameroonian co-teacher, Mr. Promise. We can't control the external world, but we can control what is inside us, and that's all that God asks of us. I should rightly conclude the essays I've begun, but with one important change, given that our journey together has ended. Bob, may I say goodbye? And yet, we are resurrection people. We believe Bob has started his eternal journey, and I have begun mine. The words are as they were in the beginning. May I say hello? One is we to go up and offer their comments.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Robert Roy Schenck's son, Robert Paul Schenck. I'm glad you're all here to reflect on and celebrate my father. I would like to share just a few of my thoughts and memories of his life. We remember Dad as being incredibly prolific, as I think we know, with a long and very storied career as a hand surgeon. We knew Dad as the most talented and inspirational hand surgeon. His abilities and care brought an unfathomable amount of repair and healing to those who were touched by his hands, pun intended. We remember Dad as a teacher and a writer, passing along his knowledge to those around him, whether in Chicago or places around the globe. We remember Dad providing us kids with the opportunity of a myriad of experiences, visiting museums, viewing art, attending church, walking botanical gardens, going to zoos, attending sporting events, skiing, snowmobiling, canoeing, and the list goes on. We remember Dad as the leader of our family, who lived for quite some time. Researching our family lineage, crafting a lengthy family tree, and sharing that family history with us and others, including the folks in this room. We remember Dad as president of the Holland Society, who worked tirelessly to improve the organization in his tenure, bringing women into the society, organizing the society's library, and working to connect people from across the country with Dutch heritage. We remember my dad as a photographer. He captured beautiful images. You can see a few of them over there from around the world and pictures of his hand-through craft. We remember Dad as a singer in church with a beautiful tenor voice. We remember Dad as a musician who enjoyed playing the saxophone over many years. And we remember Dad's somewhat dry humor and certainly his jokes. Here's one I can quote. Like, a guy gets in a cab and gives the cab driver his destination. Cab driver starts driving, but when he comes to a red light, he floors it through the intersection, nearly missing other cars in the process. The guy says, "Are you crazy? That was a red light." Cab driver says, "My brother, who also is a cab driver, taught me how to drive. And he told me that anytime you get to a red light, you floor it." The driver keeps on going, and now with a very uneasy passenger. But when he gets to a green light, he suddenly hits the brakes. The guy says, "What are you doing? That's a green light." The cab driver says, "I stopped because my brother might be coming through the other way." But seriously, remember Dad for his indelible mark on the world, making it a better place, and his ability to teach that importance and impart it by example. I hope and trust that we will treasure Dad's life, carry on his legacy, and take comfort knowing he's in the care of God in heaven now. I did bring a small photo album, but many of them are here. If you'd like to take a look at it, you're welcome to. The pictures worth 1,000 words, and you took many of them. The pictures were showing my dad's life as a baby, a boy, a young man and husband, a father, a grandfather, and a great grandfather with emphasis on great. Thank you. God bless.
Good afternoon, I'm David Duggan, and this is a bit of a bittersweet moment for me. Bob was somewhat of a father figure, and we would go to ball games, I'll explain it later. But it's also where I grew up in the church. I was here from 53 till 61 under Gowan Williams, the dean, the West Chicago Deanery, and Robert Owen. They signed my King James Version of the Bible, which I keep on my desk. I've kept it all these years. I used to write a column for the newspaper circulated to Episcopalians in the Diocese of Chicago. It was called Faith Walk. That newspaper and the column died a number of years ago, but I have kept writing devotional columns. They're published typically at a website called Virtue Online, which purports to be the largest website devoted to the Orthodox Episcopal Anglican faith. This is one which I wrote several years ago, 4 decades and counting. Excuse me, my a friend from church just celebrated his 90th birthday. Twice a survivor of heart surgery, and more recently from COVID. He has lived a life taking him from frontier farm to the pinnacle of the medical profession. A noted hand surgeon. By trade, he has worked in leper colonies and Indian reservations, African missions, and university medical centers. And he only chose medicine because he believed that he was too timorous to be a minister. His knocking knees would drown out the message he wanted to preach. We met 4 years ago at an early morning service. Though short in stature, with a tilted torso caused by his heart surgeries, he had a vibrancy to his passing of the peace. For several years, I accompanied him to college football and basketball games. Barely clearing 5 feet, he had been the basketball team manager before med school. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the fight in the dog. He told his taller teammates. 90 years is longer than any of my immediate forebears has enjoyed on this earth. I put enjoy in quotes. As for them, and I suppose many, their last years were racked with infirmity. Even if they didn't complain, you knew that they believed that their time had come and they were waiting for the inevitable. By contrast, my friend seems not to share this viewpoint. He genuinely looks forward to the morrow. 70 years allowed by the psalmist give a person time to mature, achieve, and reflect. The 80 given to the strong allow continued reflection, chances to see what has been missing. The psalmist gives no guidance to those entering their 10th decade. Perhaps coincidentally, by common tradition, Jesus lived until only about 30 years old, before the effects of aging could diminish his body, which bore the stripes for us. My friend is now 3 times that age, and 3 is a number with both divine and cosmic significance. The number of patriarchs and members of the Trinity, the planes of our existence, and the divisions of time. And Christ, of course, unified all, deity and patriarch, time and creation. My friend can look forward to his greeting. Well done, good and faithful servant.
Hello, it's me again. This time I'm speaking for my husband who couldn't be here because he's sick. And he deeply regrets that. He was looking forward to seeing Marcia and in part meeting some of you as well who were significant to him in his life. But I'm going to read my husband's words. I loved Bob Schenck. I agree with that too. I only knew Bob for 8 years, his last years. We met because of our connection to Taylor University. In the 1940s, Bob showed up there as a 15-year-old, like Marcia said. Who does that? Bob. Bob was broke, certainly out of his element, and all of 4 feet, 11 inches, he told me. He finished up by the time he was 20, and I believe he said he was 5 feet 1 inches when he graduated. So we laughed about it. Bob called Taylor his alma mater and his alma mater because at the time in his life when he lost his mom and his ties to his dad, the university and its people meant everything to him. It was there that he fell in love with Ethiopia thanks to a roommate from Ethiopia. It was there that he fell in love with missions work and, of course, the sciences. And it was there that he fell in love with Jesus Christ. If you read Bob's CV, you'll see so much. Doctor, microsurgeon, artist, author, humanitarian, inventor, husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, businessman, pastor. Oh yeah, you wouldn't want us to forget Dutchman. I had the great pleasure these past 8 years getting to know Bob deeper. I knew life for him was very complicated before we met, but there was something super special about this giant of a man. We met 2 or 3 times a year, and in the final 2 years, I saw him more regularly. Marcia, you treated your husband with love and respect as you cared for him with great intentionality in his time of great need. Thank you for caring for our friends so well. My parents both passed from dementia, so when Marcia was searching for a home for Bob to provide his care, she started with my mom's place in Wheaton, which led her to Bob's final home in Glen Ellyn. The people there all loved Dr. Bob, no surprise. I brag on him all the time. Did you know he once drove an ambulance 10,000 miles to a remote village in need? 10,000 miles. At the age of almost 80, I'd say. Did you know he was believed to be the first person in the world to reattach a severed finger? I'd ask. Bob routinely would blush and would say something funny like, "Oh no, Steve's in charge of my fan club." He didn't want the attention. Repeatedly, I asked about his motivation. Why did you do those things? And repeatedly, he'd keep it simple. He'd say, because I saw a need. I often felt like I was talking to Forrest Gump. It's one of the many things I learned from Bob Schenck that I can encourage you with today. If you see a need, particularly for someone that's hurting, step, walk into it now. Bob knew his salvation was in faith through grace alone, not in works. But boy, did he ever live out his faith by serving others. On the back of his book, chronicling his life, which he wrote at the age of almost 90, he said this: "These memories serve to remind us all that with perseverance and courage, we all can do much good in society." One final thought I'd like to share. About a year ago, he told me this: "I can't wait to meet Jesus, my Savior." He knew, based on the authority of Scripture, heaven was his home.
Reflecting on his life, he wrote, "Do not mourn or weep, rejoice. Look not back, but forward. The best is yet to come." How poignant. Life is hard. Death without the assurance of faith in Christ can be brutal. But I know in my heart of hearts, Bob would want to share his love with each and every one of you today. He'd want you to submit and surrender your life to Christ if you haven't. And he'd want all of us to rise above our circumstances, maybe the hardships of our past, to persevere in faith, to look out the front window and not be stuck in the past. Do not mourn or weep, rejoice. The best is yet to come. Bob Schenck is experiencing the best right now with Jesus Christ his Savior. Thank you.
My name is Jerry Whitney. Marcia is my sister. And I can say she was a pain when we were growing up. Where are you going? What are you gonna do? How come? It's like, oh my goodness. Our bedrooms were next to each other, and I had to learn to adapt. My mother made me. So most of my education is life lessons. So give you a little background. Our father was a music teacher for 50 years, and nobody ended up really doing much with music. My brother was the best, and then my sister, and then my dad just gave up on me trying to play the trombone. You know, if you play the trombone, you have a lot of saliva. And he said, you know, you're never going to amount to a good trombone player because you have too much spit. So I developed an appreciation for teachers because when you come into the world, you don't know much. But you need teachers and you need to pay attention and you adapt. And during the Vietnam War, I was a medic at San Diego Base Army Hospital, so I got a appreciation for the medical field, doctors, nurses, patient care people. We had people in there, a few from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, so it was all pretty much military. And so I talked to some of the people if they needed help on the different wards, surgical or intensive care, that kind of stuff. So I got a pretty good appreciation of that. I don't have to say this, but war is not a pleasant way to resolve disputes. These people live with that stuff all their life. And a couple of them always told me that lucky ones died. The other ones had PTSD problems and so on and so forth. So the two most noble professions that I think are teaching and the medical field. And I asked some of the doctors that I was working with in the hospital, you know, why'd you become a doctor? And some of them because their fathers were doctors, but they also wanted to help. And one guy said, well, because I like to perform miracles. And especially the surgeons, pretty remarkable people. And when you get around people that are that gifted, and even if you're in the same profession and you know, you get admiration from people that do the same thing you do, that's probably the highest compliment you can get from your peers. And so kind of going back to what Marcia said, yeah, our mother was not real tickled to death about her marrying Bob. But I said, it's like kind of those road markers on the highway, say you're mile 121, 120, it's just an indication of where you're at. And then when I got to meet him, their frequencies, their interaction, it was pretty compatible. So I told my mother that I think Marcia's pretty blessed because she met somebody that not only is a teacher, but somebody that's a doctor. And so I asked him how he did his work, how did he learn, and some of it you've already heard. And I just said, to me, it's a miracle. I mean, you choose something that's very delicate. And I also asked my father, I said, well, what's the difference from your profession for doctors? He says, well, we both have to have the detail. We both have to do things in sequence. We both take risks. And so I told my mother that, and she didn't have too much to say about it. But after a couple of years, reports from Marcia and pictures, she'd send stuff when they were all over the world, you know, really, living our lives, and pretty much had a good relationship. I thought Bob was a gentleman. He was smart. He was witty. He wasn't pretentious. He didn't flaunt it. And it was like, oh my goodness. And I can't remember who told me this, but somebody said, you know, behind every good man is a great woman. And so they're the most basic influencers in the world, as far as I'm concerned. You never know the outcomes that come out from presidents and so on, that women had a pretty good influence on them. So I think that was a situation there with my sister. She had an influence on me for sure. She's a pain in the butt. I told her I wanted to say a few words that, like I said, of all the professions that I've dealt with, and I'll be 79 in May, teaching and the medical field is probably the most important positions you could have. And people that dedicate themselves and donate, give back to society. A lot of it goes unsung. People don't really realize what they do until you're in those kind of situations. And really the medical field, when especially in a war situation, you really see these wars that are political and not like World War I, World War II, where people had relatives overseas. So I got appreciation in life that I couldn't get out of school. My sister is saying, so I guess I'm
Good afternoon. I'm John Cabell, a member of St. Chrysostom's Church in Chicago. Bob was a very active member of our congregation for many years. Something that struck me during one of the lessons that we heard today was God used his right hand to do something. And Bob used to say, I'm not a specialist, I'll work on either the right or left hand. I also looked at the program. This is the most wonderful picture of Bob on the front. I think it's probably the best picture I've ever seen on a program for memorial, because it shows the depth of Bob's humanity and character. And he's also wearing his beloved orange medal from the Holland America Society. And I think we all know he was so proud of the work of first of all, of his heritage and the work that he could do for them. He once told me that I think one of his early ancestors' houses in New York is now in the Brooklyn Museum. And I have not seen it. I was due to go there a couple of months ago, and unfortunately I was not well and I had to postpone it, but I am planning to go there, and it's a big featured item in the museum. Now, Bob, as I mentioned, was very active at St. Christopher's, and one of the things he brought to us was a program for small group interactions. And we started this off with small group dinners. I think groups of up to 8 or 10 gathering in people's homes. And the idea was that, you know, if you go to church, you're with a big group of people, not everybody stays for the coffee hour. You don't always get a lot of time to interact and get to know people. But really, the church is largely a community. It's the stronger the community, the stronger it helps people support people, and the stronger it helps members develop their faith. So Bob suggested we start this small group dinner program, and it was an incredible success. It ran for many, many years, and he was instrumental in us doing it. The next thing he did was to initiate small groups for the men of the church. And we used to have a regular breakfast, different groups on one Saturday morning a month, where we would get together and share what was going on in our lives and talk about issues we were thinking through relating to faith and a membership of the church. And then one day I said to him, I'd spent 8 years working in California, and my wife and I have been members of All Saints Episcopal Church in Pasadena, which is a mega Episcopal church. I mean, I think they have 3,000 members. They had a program for men's retreat, which unfortunately I was never able to go to, but it sounded to me like a good idea. So I mentioned this to Bob, and he said, oh yeah, let's do this. So the next thing I knew, he was off organizing this men's retreat. And for the first couple of years, this is in the late 90s, the first couple of years we organized it for members of St. Chrysostom's, and the word got out, and men from other parishes in the diocese contacted us and said, we'd like to attend. And Bob said, that's fine. And so he opened it up, and that program is still going strong. We have a men's retreat coming up on the 13th and 14th of February, and George Smith, who is the rector here, is going to be leading it. So anybody who'd like to come, please contact us. But Bob ran that for a dozen or so years, then Jim Massey took over, and then it got passed back to me. But Bob has been a wonderful friend. His vision, his energy levels, even when he was older, and one or two people have mentioned his driving the van from London to Mongolia. I was involved in a project to drive from London to New Delhi when I was 21, which was a challenge enough. I can't even think about the excitement and the challenges of driving a lot of the time through Russia. So, Bob, it was an honor to know you. You're held in memory in our hearts in great esteem, and it's wonderful to be here today and share memories of Bob.
I am Laura Kearney. I'm an occupational therapist first and a hand therapist second because of Dr. Schenck. And I met him in 1985 due to Mary Haran in the back there, one of my dear OT friends who called me up one day and said, I've been working with a hand surgeon, Dr. Schenck, for several years, but I have a new job opportunity. He needs a therapist. I go, Mary, I know nothing about hand therapy. She goes, don't worry, he'll teach you. And guess what? He did. So I learned a lot from Dr. Schenck. He was my mentor. He taught me everything from how to do hand splits very precisely and perfectly, how to follow post-op protocols for different surgeries. He got me very involved in professional organizations, including the American Association for Hand Surgery, where he had some offices and he got me involved as a member. We helped plan annual meetings for that group with emphasis on hand therapy. I ended up staying with him for 13 years. I was always very appreciative of the relationship between therapist and physician because in many work settings, you don't have that. You place a phone call to a doctor, maybe you get a call back in 2 or 3 days. This is before computers, of course, but you know, he was right down the hall. I could just knock on his door. He was a busy guy, but he always took my questions and he answered that. So I'm forever grateful for that. And I continue to practice to this day. So thank you, Dr. Schenck.
You go, oh, I don't know if I can follow you.
I am Lisandra Figueroa. I was Dr. Schenck's personal assistant. I am not an eloquent speaker, so I'm just going to tell you just a couple of things that I used to do with Dr. Schenck. I was the person that organized all the meetings for the Hand Surgery Society, for the Reunion Society, for the Christopher Men's Retreat. I was that person that you got the emails from, signed by Dr. Schenck. But they were really good. Dr. Schenck, my sunshine. I visited my sunshine at the memory care facility. Marshall said he may not remember him. I walked in with his favorite angel food cake, his strawberries, and some cookies. And I'm like, hey, Dr. Schenck. And he just looked at me and he's like, Lisa. And I was like, oh, so you do remember me. He said, how could I forget that smile? I have him in here. I haven't worked for him for, it's been quite some time, but it did hurt when he passed away. And I'm so glad to see so many people here to honor him. Marsha, thank you for keeping me posted on anything having to do with my sunshine. It was great seeing his kids. I seen them when they were younger. Kyle, when he came to the office, Jamie, when she came to the office, Karen, and Bob Jr. It's nice seeing everybody here. Bob was my favorite pastor. Well-renowned. I'm gonna say I worked for a well-renowned hand surgeon. That's what he was to me. And he fixed my pinky. And I have nothing else to say because I'm a crybaby, so I'm gonna sit down.
Hello. One of Bob's many grandchildren, but I'm the oldest. Sort of. I don't have a very eloquent essay written, but I did have points that I wanted to expand on after reflecting since his passing. Most recently, it's so close to hearing his passing, just a matter of days before hearing about it. I was reminiscing about a 2012 trip to Chicago with a music group that I was an instructor of, and I was filling in as for high school, and I was filling where there was a missing percussionist who couldn't attend the trip, so I was filling in playing timpani on Chicago Symphony Hall stage, which was kind of a yay moment for me as well. And Granddad and Marcia came to see me play on stage with the group. And then within a matter of days of reminiscing with this trip, I heard about his passing. So I wonder if in his final week, he was potentially reaching out to family. That being said, I didn't get to see him very often. I was born in Hawaii, spent most of my youth in Hawaii, and then now in California. So given my distance, it was rather difficult to see him often, but when I did see him, it left an impression on me, as he did on many of you. I had two granddaddy Bobs by coincidence. I have another granddad that passed in 2013 on my dad's side. But they both like blue, and so I have very fondness for the color blue, and both of them we went to baseball games with. So when the Padres play the Cubs, I was good because either way, each team won, I won. So being able to go to, well, let me get back up. So, but my granddaddy Bob from Chicago, whenever I thought of Chicago, I thought of granddaddy Bob. I had a lot of formative memories of going to the big city as a kid, going to Michigan Avenue, going to the Sears Tower, view from Lakeshore Drive at the condo, and always welcomed so warmly by Marcia. And I remember walking Sir and Madam out there in the cold and the summer. So I got to experience both Chicago in the summer and the winter. Got to see both contrasts. Visiting condos was a lovely time each time I was there, and kind of hanging out in the lower one, so the man cave area is his lower condo. But yeah, the only time I've been to Wrigley Stadium was because of Granddad. It was fun to see that, and also to see the legendary 90s Chicago Bulls dream team. We went to go see them as well. So I got to experience a lot of big city life because of Granddaddy Bob. I did talk about Padres. Comiskey, no, here's the thing. We also went to a game of Comiskey. It was nice, but Wrigley was more fun. We also know his humor, his dry humor. I think I picked up on that as a kid. I think I've shaken off a little bit. I'm not as punny, but I'm more punny now than I am dry deliveries. And I remember many times we'd be at dinner and a joke he told, as the conversation continued, I'd finally get the punchline because it just kind of, was he joking? Oh yeah, he was joking. That was good. So when I was doing some sketches in my freshman year in high school art class, we had to do a self sketch, and I remember sketching my hand because I was inspired by that double. There's two right hands sculpture. I remember I was thinking as I was sketching my right hand or my left hand, I was remembering the dual hand sculpture that Grant had. And I remember being inspired by visiting his office and seeing all the contraptions and amazing therapies he came up with as I became a percussionist and ended up teaching and coaching drumming of high schoolers. Stretching is very important. I would always think of the therapies and preventative. I was trying to prevent carpal tunnel with all my students that I was teaching percussion. I always think of Granddaddy Bob when I was doing that. And I did that for about 20 years. I've moved on to some other things, but I always remember that as I was getting the stretching regimen. Also, I remember not only blue and baseball and all this other stuff, as many of his portraits show, he had quite a beard, right? He always had like a very well-trimmed beard. And whenever I was trying to, do my best, because I'm sure he had a barber to do that, but as I tried to maintain mine, I was like, what's Granddaddy's like? And so I was thinking of that. So he has a great example of a beard streak, but not just that, but he's a great example of just person and inspiring personality as well, which is far more important than facial hair. I remember riding in the back of one of his, he had many Jaguar cars, right? More than one? Yeah. I remember riding in the back, crammed in the back of one of them. I think it was like 12 or something. We were in state from one of my mom's remarriages, and that was one. I remember driving around. We were because she was having the wedding in Elmwood. There was an opportunity to hear from him and other family members about his early life and hearing about just what he overcame in such an early age. And I'm a 12, 13-year-old kid going like, wow, I barely want to do my homework. And he's already basically a doctor, so there are times when I try to catch myself. If I'm being lazy, I'm like, what could Bob think if he saw anything lazy right now? So he helps kind of nudge me forward, like, okay, if he can graduate high school at 15 and go on and become a thing, you can at least do this thing that you can do. The 80th celebration. So I mentioned the 2012 trip. That was, I think, the last time I saw him in person. We have a picture together at Symphony Hall. And we also have a picture together at the 80th celebration where he's on his tippy toes. And I'm kind of scooching down, so we're kind of the same height. But that 80th celebration was, I think, where I remember him the most is just, it was kind of like this, but he was standing here singing a piece he had learned. He's like, I'm going to sing this, and he nailed it. We did it that night. We got to see the slideshow of his Mongolia trip. And years later, another show came out called The Long Way Round with Ewan McGregor. It's about doing the trip. It's very similar route going around to Mongolia. So when I watched that show, I was thinking, man, I wonder if my granddad was there in the ambulance driving around on Earth. Now, whatever has happened with my mom over the years, one of the positive things that came out of it was she insisted that I know my granddad. And I'm very thankful for her, to that I got to know an amazing man as much as I did. And so he continues to inspire me to this day. So thank you.
I won't make this too long, a lot of things have already been said. I'm Karen. My dad's daughter. A flood of memories that come to mind of being little and the things that he taught us. He was always a teacher. Taught me how to ride a 5-wheeler bike. He taught me how to build an igloo out of snow with cardboard boxes. He taught us to ski. We played music as a family, like a band, together, and played violin. We all played music together. We would watch his live performances on the walls. He would be practicing what he was going to do for the Hand Society. So we talked to it for 5, 7, whatever, endoscopic, laparoscopic, this, whatever. We had toes for thumbs, we had skin grafts, and then retraction of all the tendons brought back and everything sewn back together. Everything worked, and we thought everybody watched those Friday night movies, bringing popcorn. We didn't know that that wasn't quite the norm, but we learned so much. And the love of music, I think, has taken place really deep rooted in our family. I played church piano for 25 years. I taught lessons. It's so important, and I really credit him for fostering and fostering a lot of things in us. He taught us how to go forward, to face adversity, to be kind. With his global philanthropy, it was an example of how far can you take this? You just keep going, Jesus will help you. Just keep going further and further. Help people, learn things, use it to support your family, but use it to bring people up and help them reach their full potential. And I'll always be grateful. You never look at today like that's all there is, but tomorrow's amazing. That's really amazing. Love you, Dad.
My name is Jim Malin, member of St. Francis with Bob, and what just caught my attention was Friday night popcorn movie. Did they do that? For years, or every year, we would have a retreat up at Tacoma, and Bob was in charge of the projector. And that was a hit or miss getting set up and so on. I was in charge of the popcorn. And, so one year I was looking for a little bit of motion. I don't know, Tim, that's what you can do it all. And that's one of that Bob was an engineer and inventor, the doctor, but he liked to take all these things and apply it to people. We mentioned the social groups at the church on Sunday night. And if he's did anything well, it was organization getting the homework ready before we start the procedure. In surgery, you have to do that, so you don't want to make a mistake. We would apply the same work ethic or ethic to people and so on. And but it was never in an adverse or bad way. My memories of Bob go back at least 30 years. When I first saw him on the tour, he doesn't look like he's short and get a beard, so maybe he belongs to another place. And then later on, I found out he was a Methodist from rural Illinois. And I have about 1,000 or so other memories about it. I can't even tap into right now, but I'll think of them forever, as long as I live. Thank you for inviting us, Margie.
So it'd be nice to thank the caterer, Dan Lawson, for this beautiful hospitality and sharing with the families and the other servers. Really fun, thank you so much.
And we'd love for you to take the flowers and everything like you.
Yes.